Good evening, everyone. You're watching Awaz News. I'm Kubra Ali, and I'll be taking you to top news across Canada. RCMP interviewing witnesses in Ontario Greenbelt land swap scandal, Premier's office. Torontonians dealing with homelessness are dying younger and it's getting worse, new study finds. 7-Eleven to offer booze in Ontario stores starting next month. Wet weather returns to Toronto as parts of eastern Ontario, Quebec brace for heavy rainfall. Students, recent immigrants hit hard by weakening job market, StatCan data suggests. Sick kids see spike in number of injuries related to e-scooters, e-bikes. Nearly a dozen shell casings recovered at scene of deadly shooting near Woodbine Beach, police. Those were the headlines, and now let's look into the details. The RCMP is interviewing witnesses connected to Ontario's Greenbelt scandal, Premier Doug Ford office confirmed to Awaz News on Friday. In an email, a spokesperson affirmed that the Ford government has always said it would cooperate with the police investigation into the province's now scrap plan to develop parts of the environmentally sensitive area. At an unrelated news conference on Friday in Thunder Bay, Ontario, Ford said his government has nothing to hide. Ontario announced its plans to build at least 50,000 new homes on the protected Green Belt back in November 2022. Then Municipal Affairs and Housing Minister Steve Clark said at the time that the government would need to remove 7,400 acres to do so, but that 9,400 acres would be added elsewhere. Ford had previously said he would leave the land untouched. In a scathing report released by then Ontario Auditor General Bonnie Lysyk exactly 1 year ago today, she found that some developers may have received a provincial treatment during the process of selecting 14 of the 15 proposed building sites. Lysyk also suggested that the land up for development could have seen an $8.3 billion increase in value. The sixth value for money investigation, as well as separate investigation by the Integrity Commissioner, was triggered by media reports that some developers may have been tipped off about the decision to develop the protected land ahead of time. Later that month, Ontario Provincial Police referred the matter to the RCMP out of a perceived conflict on interest. At the time, the OPP's Anti-Rackets Division said it had been reviewing complaints related to the scandal since mid-December of the previous year. Ford had rebuffed calls to reverse the Greenbelt development plans for months, saying it was necessary to meet the province's goal of building 1.5 million homes by 2031. However, in mid-September, he announced that his government was changing course. Two cabinet ministers stepped down in the wake of the scandal, including Clark and the former Minister of Public and Business Service Delivery, Khalid Rashid. Opposition leader Mary Stiles released a statement on Friday after Ford's office confirmed that the RCMP had begun interviewing witnesses. People who are homeless in Toronto are dying younger than the general population, and the disparity is getting especially worse among younger generations, a new study has found. The study published on Friday by Unity Health Toronto found that people who are homeless in Toronto are dying on average 17 years younger than those who are not homeless. The study warned that the gap between life expectancies for people who are housed versus people who are homeless has been growing and especially pronounced for younger generations. Lucy Richard, a researcher at Unity Health Toronto, told Awaz News that the age disparity was the most disturbing finding in her research. The mortality gap, she said, wasn't concentrated to those facing homelessness in their older years and was actually most pronounced at younger ages. While the study observed 0 deaths among housed participants between the ages of 16 and 25, there were a number of deaths in that range among the homeless cohort. Richard said the new data suggests a significant worsening compared to research conducted in Toronto in the 1990s, which found a similar disparity. The study, conducted by researchers from Toronto, London, and Hamilton, followed 640 people in Toronto who were experiencing homelessness over the span of 1 year. The participants were matched based on their age, sex, and score of overall health with comparison groups, a general population group, and a low-income housed population. Over the span of a year, more than a dozen participants of the study died while homeless across Toronto. While compared to the two comparison groups, the average person who died while homeless was 17 years younger. According to the City of Toronto data, there are currently more than 8,000 people experiencing homelessness in Toronto. So far in 2024, 43 people have died in the city's shelter system. Richard said the biggest limitation in the study is the lack of information on the cause of death. Convenience store chain 7-Eleven says it has been given the green light to sell beer, wine, and ready-to-drink cocktails in Ontario stores starting September 5th. In a news release issued Friday, the company said it received its convenience store liquor licenses from the Alcohol and Game Commission of Ontario AGCO earlier this week and is currently training staff at 58 locations across the province. Earlier this summer, Premier Doug Ford announced a timeline for when Ontario would be expanding the sale of alcohol in grocery stores and corner stores. Convenience stores will be permitted to start selling beer, cider, wine, and ready-to-drink beverages as early as September 5th and as of October 31st. All eligible grocery and big box stores will be able to sell beer, cider, wine, and ready-to-drink beverages, including large pack sizes. The chain said the selection of alcoholic beverages available in the stores will include many favorite brands and a host of popular and local made-in-Ontario products. The company noted that it already operates 2 licensed restaurant format stores in the Ontario in Leamington and Niagara Falls and has 20 licensed locations across Alberta. Toronto is in for some wet weather Friday with as much as 30 millimeters of rain expected to fall in the city today. A special weather statement was issued for Toronto and much of the Golden Horseshoe on Thursday as parts of the eastern Canada prepare for heavy downpours. In a virtual news conference on Thursday, Environment Canada said an existing weather system is expected to collide with remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie, causing a significant rain event in some areas. Rainfall warnings are in effect for regions of Quebec and Eastern Ontario, which could see as much as 100 millimeters of accumulation. Jennifer Smith, Environment and Climate Change Canada's national warning meteorologist, said heavy downpours could cause localized flooding in urban environments. She said there could be significant impacts in the large urban centers such as Ottawa, Montreal, and potentially even Toronto. Basements is parts of the city flooded and sections of the Gardiner Expressway and Don Valley Parkway were closed after the busy roadways became inundated with water, stranding some motorists. Environment Canada indicated Friday that the heaviest period of rain is expected in Toronto this morning and early this afternoon. Environment Canada senior climatologist Dave Phillips told Awaz News that Toronto likely won't break any rainfall records today. He noted that by mid-afternoon, the threat of rain should be over in the GTA. Students who have been hunting for summer job and recent immigrants looking for work have felt the brunt of the country's weakening labor market, Statistics Canada's latest employment report shows. The federal agency's July labor force survey released on Friday says the overall jobless rate held steady at 6.4% last month as the economy shed a modest 2,800 jobs. The employment rate, which measures the share of the population aged 15 and older that is employed, fell slightly as fewer people looked for work. The slowdown in the Canadian job market has also been particularly felt by recent immigrants as their unemployment rate has climbed 3.1 percentage points on an annual basis to 12.6% in July. By comparison, the unemployment rate for the people born in Canada rose 0.5 percentage points over the last year to 5.6% in the month. Brendan Bernard, a senior economist at hiring website Indeed, said young people and newcomers have been disproportionately affected by the economic slowdown because employers are hiring fewer workers rather than laying employees off. The increase in unemployment is especially stark for recent immigrant youth who face a jobless rate of 22.8%. That's up 8.6 percentage points from a year ago. The softening job market, however, doesn't appear to be affecting wage growth yet, as average hourly wages continue to grow at a strong pace, rising 5.2% from a year ago. The Bank of Canada has signaled that it's increasingly concerned about job market conditions. Governor Tiff Macklem said last month that the central bank's decision to cut its key interest rate again was driven in a part by a desire to boost economic growth. The Bank of Canada's summary of deliberations, released earlier this week, suggested some members of the Governing Council are worried further deterioration in the labour market could hinder that process. Graham says CIBC expects 3 more interest rates cuts this year, one at every scheduled decisions. The bank's next interest rate decision is set for September 4th. The Bank of Canada's key interest rate now stands at 4.5%, a level that's still expected to restrain economic growth. But the central bank has signaled it plans to continue cutting rates so long as inflation continues to slow. The Hospital for Sick Children says it is seeing a notable uptick this summer in the number of injuries related to e-scooters and e-bikes in Toronto, calling the increase a concerning trend. In a news release published on its website, SickKids said, in June and July alone, the emergency department has seen 16 injuries related to e-scooter use, compared to just 5 injuries over the same period last year. E-scooters and other similar devices can be attractive to children who may view them as toys or youth who use them for transportation. Dr. Susan Beno, medical co-director of the trauma program and emergency physician at SickKids, said in the release. Beno noted that high speeds, a lack of helmet use, young age, and interaction with motor vehicles all place children and youth at risk of injury if there is a fall or collision. According to the hospital, since 2020, the Sick Kids Trauma Registry has seen a significant increase in the number of serious injured tied to battery-powered devices, with e-scooters accounting for about 85% of battery-powered device injuries from 2021 to 2024. In more than 50% of the injuries seen at the Sick Kids Emergency Department, the patient was not wearing a helmet, the hospital said. SickKids noted that the children under the age of 16 should not operate e-devices, and anyone who does use battery-powered devices should always wear a proper fitting helmet that is in a good condition. The hospital also encouraged users to follow the manufacturer's warning on the age, height, and weight restrictions, adding that these devices should never be operated with multiple riders. Police say that investigators recovered nearly a dozen shell casings at the scene of brazen shooting near Woodbine Beach on Thursday night. The shooting occurred in a laneway between Lakeshore Boulevard East and Boardwalk Drive at around 10:40 p.m. Police say that the male victim, believed to be in his mid-20s, found at the scene with a gunshot wound to his chest. He was rushed to the hospital but pronounced dead a short time later. Police are looking for 2 to 3 suspects in connection with the shooting but have not provided detailed descriptions. The information we have received from witnesses in the area is that there was some sort of argument or discussion among a group of people prior to the shooting. Deputy Trevor Grieve told reporters at the scene on Friday afternoon. Obviously, there is some concern for public safety at that point in terms of such a brazen shooting happening at 10:40 p.m. in the evening near the beaches and the Ashbridges Bay, and a lot of people were in the backyards at the time in the laneway. Grieve said that forensic officers combing the scene have recovered 11 shell casings that spanned a distance of about 70 meters down the laneway. He said that the victim was not carrying identification at the time, and investigators are still working to confirm his identity but do have some leads. Meanwhile, officers are continuing to go door to door in the neighborhood in research of surveillance footage that might shed further light on what happened, Grieve said. Security video provided to Awaz News by a resident in the area earlier on Friday captured what appears to be audio of the deadly shooting. In the video, someone can be heard shouting in the distance while at least 10 loud bangs go off out of the view of the surveillance camera.
Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kubrali. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same channel. Have a good night.